was focused on how Snowflake and Talend work together, on how we connect together and deliver solutions for customers. And really starting off here with some of the key capabilities that Talend offers for Snowflake. So essentially around the ingestion area, there's a couple of ways that we support ingestion, support getting your data into Snowflake. That could be as simple as using our Stitch service, which is focused more on business users, provides simple lift and shift capabilities to get data quickly into your Snowflake data warehouses. That provides over 100 different connectors spanning different types of SaaS applications. So whether that's Facebook ads, Google Analytics, Marketo, Salesforce, all that sort of stuff, to be able to take data from there in a self-service fashion, create a pipeline that effectively collects and loads data on a schedule quickly into your data warehouse, starts populating a data warehouse very quickly. As we go up the chain in terms of capability and complexity, we start going into Talend Cloud. We start looking at capabilities around ETL and ELT, as well as real-time capabilities. And that's where we start to introduce more capability, more features, and more connectors for legacy systems, as well as things like push-down SQL processing using ELT natively. And this is where we start looking at things like developer features. And with that, we enable you with all capabilities in this regard. There's no limitation on the connectors you have. There's no tax, if you will, no data tax on what you can use and what you can't use, and restrictions around having to pay for using certain features, that sort of stuff. And here we also introduce things like real-time capabilities to be able to start working with streaming data, as well as API services to start ingesting data that's coming in at a real-time rate, and start working with that and loading that into your data warehouse, into Snowflake. We also introduce capabilities around data quality here, so data profiling, data duplication, data remediation, data stewardship processes are all available here, and all are provided within the same interface, ensuring that it's effectively users who are technical as well as non-technical business users are able to collaborate and work together to ensure that only best quality data is flowing through into Snowflake for you. In terms of governance as well, we have the Talend Data Catalog, which provides, along with data stewardship and data inventory, provides fairly broad end-to-end lineage, metadata management capabilities, and obviously enables compliance and regulatory capabilities as well in there. In terms of our partnership, again, just recapping who's Talend. So we've been growing quite significantly, a market-leading cloud data integration vendor. It says 3,500 customers here. I should have updated that. Which is well over 6,000 at the moment. And we do provide fairly strong tools for integrators, business users, analysts, etc., to work with their data, get it into cloud data lakes and warehouses like Snowflake, and work in there on their data as well, providing a full gamut of ingestion, data quality, and data governance functionality. With Snowflake, we do have over 1,000 joint customers globally, and some of the largest Snowflake customers out there do rely on Talend. I'll show you an example of some of those in a second. And in terms of partners that we work with, or system integrators that we work with, there is a fairly strong overlap as well, meaning there's a lot of knowledge there that's shared, allowing you to leverage that to start developing combined pipelines. And several use cases that we obviously support as well with Snowflake. So things like modernization of data warehouses, or moving, in cases where organizations are moving their existing warehouses, where they're on-premise or with a different vendor, across into Snowflake, allowing them to replicate that quickly and easily. Augmented data lakes, where you're working across data which is present in multiple landscapes, as well as integrated data engineering, allowing you to work in different facets of things like ELT, etc., to start delivering outcomes quickly within Snowflake. Here's an example of some of the customers that we do have globally. Obviously, some of these names you will recognize. Some of them may be a bit more obscure, but yeah, obviously some quite big names that we've worked together on and delivered capability and data warehousing capabilities to globally. I just want to take a moment just to talk about some cool new features that we're introducing with Snowflake, actually. This one specifically focuses on data quality and data quality in the cloud. So some of you may have heard of Talend's Trust Score. which is a way of measuring trustworthiness of your data sets, of each of the individual data sets, using clever machine learning, semantic matching algorithms. And this is something we'll show you in the demonstration. But coming soon is a feature around native integration of Talend's Trust Score within Snowflake, allowing you to run this and push it down onto Snowflake. And it delivers a few key benefits, and that allows you to use leverage your Snowflake credits. So in one spot, leverage your Snowflake credits with Talend rather than having multiple different billing scenarios. And you can kind of in this way leverage Snowflake's compute directly to run the health assessments for your data, to understand what the quality of your data is, where errors and issues may be occurring in your data that may need attention and cleansing. It also enables you to access data quality capabilities within Snowflake. So it brings Talend's experience and knowledge in the data quality space to your Snowflake integration or to your Snowflake data warehouse, and allows you to leverage this to start looking at your data sets that have been loaded into the data warehouse and to understand what's good, what's bad, what needs fixing, and then start to take action from there. And being a native integration, being one of the first native integrations on Snowflake's UDF platform, it means that all of this execution will run natively within Snowflake, ensuring that your data doesn't leave Snowflake. It all stays within your own data warehouse, and all this validation process is run internally in there, ensuring that any sort of data provenance requirements, etc., are met, but also at the same time ensuring that you get the highest level of security and performance. Okay.
Yeah. If I just wanted to add, that sounds pretty exciting as well. Being able to do all that DQ at scale and the trust score work. Looking forward to it.
Yeah. It's going to be pretty cool. Yeah, definitely. All right. So just going to move on to the next slide here. We're going to now come to talking about the reference architecture here. So if you may remember from the agenda, this has a couple of cool bits in it. We'll be talking about the reference architecture firstly, and then about Snowflake's Partner Connect and how you can connect to Talend from within there. And also the demo. We'll be pulling out the toys, showing you how you can use Talend's data inventory, pipeline design, and stewardship to carry out some governance type functions in the cloud using Snowflake. So we'll jump into that now. Right, so let's build out this reference architecture here. So this is what we see as out in market, the best practice architecture really for getting the most out of a cloud data warehouse, whether that's a new one or a current one, you're looking to improve it and refine it. You'll start obviously with source data. Your source data could be in any sort of form or any sort of system. It could be in flat files, it could be in databases, hosted within applications, whether they're on-premise or in the cloud. It could be streaming data, it could be APIs, it could be all sorts of different types of data. What we do with this data really is take the source data and land it in a raw state within your data warehouse. So you could use Talend to do extract and load processes for your batch data. You can use it for pulling data from message queues, for subscribing to those and pulling streaming data from message queues, or for querying APIs and pulling data from that as well. And once you've got that data, you start landing it within a data warehouse, whether it's any of these, S3, ALS, etc., Snowflake in a raw state. At that point, once it's raw, you might start looking at moving it on to the next stage, which is into the staged step. I was going to say staged stage, but that doesn't quite fit. But essentially, what you're doing here is taking that raw data, and you're now starting to run data quality assessments against that data. You're starting to profile that data, find any sorts of issues that you have, and you're going to start to cleanse that data and fix that data. And you're going to start applying ELT or ETL transformations here as well. So starting to chop and change that data, bring in reference data, start doing some aggregation, filtering, basically getting the data into shape to start using it. You might start doing some merging of tables, etc., as well at this stage. And finally, you will take that data from the staged stage and start to refine it some more, start to do some more filtering or aggregating or getting it into different sorts of shape. You must start to filter down into maybe some data marts or smaller tables for specific purposes. You might start to do more specific processing of data to fit certain formats and the like. And essentially, you'll end up producing what we call the curated tables. So these are the tables that you can start now to go to the next stage and start building visualizations from. This is where you can start to use the data to start to really query the data, really start to interrogate the data and start to get answers from it. And this is where we recommend in this sort of architecture, a lot of this work, some of this can be done within the BI tools themselves, but we find it's much more powerful, much more capable if you start using the data warehouse and data warehouse capabilities along with Talend to start doing the transformation, the correction, the curation to get it into the shape, so that when you start building your visualizations, you're really just focused on building those out rather than focusing on, or your BI analysts are focusing on building the visualizations rather than focusing on transforming the data. And again, these three stages, essentially what you see the data flowing through. You see Talend helping in each of these steps to deliver the data, to start cleansing it and analyzing and cleansing it, and then start refining it and putting it into the curated shape, the aggregated shape, at which point your BI tools can start to plug in and start to work with that data. Got a couple of questions. Marco, you're answering a couple of those, so that's really good. Thanks. I might, that's all right, I'll leave that.
There's actually, if you just had time for one quick question around Talend no longer support, because you mentioned Stitch. So there's a question around, since Talend no longer supports CDC from Oracle databases, is this now provided by the Stitch subscription?
That's a great question. I am not immediately familiar with exactly how our Stitch support for CDC in Oracle is run currently, so I might need to take that away and come back to you if that's all right. I need to check on that and come back to you if that's all right. I'll park that and come back. Okay, so back here, we've basically shown the flow of taking your data from raw and landed through staged to curated. Underneath all of that, or maybe overlapping all of that, is governance, obviously, is the process of governance. That's where Talend's features and capabilities around data preparation, giving users the end-to-end capability to define what data should look like, defining rules around what the data should look like and what constitutes good quality data, as well as data stewardship, which gives your data stewards or your end users of data the ability to curate over data, over any sorts of errors and issues in data to ensure that only good quality data flows through, or gives them the capabilities to correct and cleanse data before it flows through into your different stages, staged or curated, as well as the data inventory, which provides a bird's eye view of your data, as well as that Talend Trust Score to really understand what is the quality of the data you have, what sort of data do you have, and how does it all fit together, and jump off from there to start cleansing and fixing the data. To provide that end-to-end kind of understanding and governed process flow of bringing the data from raw through staged to curated. So let's jump now into talking about Talend's Partner Connect. So, or rather Snowflake's Partner Connect, and how to jump into getting Talend in there. So if you're currently a user of Snowflake and you'd like to take a look at Talend, you'd like to access some of the features, obviously there's a couple of steps you can take here to do that. And you start off here with logging into Snowflake, obviously, and then at the top right here, click on the Partner Connect button, which many of you may already have done. And then you can search for Talend, or you can go down here, look for Talend, click on it here. Some of you did ask about Stitch. You can find Stitch in here as well. I think it's hiding over here in the background, in the blurred background. But yeah, once you click that, given the screen, you can create an account. And that should be populated for you with the connection information already pre-populated for your own Stitch accounts. You can start building and connecting data through directly from there at that point. Any questions on that, do feel free to post that in Q&A. Otherwise, we can get back to you after the session on that. Okay, just move on. And now we come to the fun part. This is where I get the toys out and can start showing you a demonstration of Talend and Snowflake working together. So for this demonstration, we'll be doing a couple of things. So we'll be connecting to Talend's data inventory and looking at a data set. And we'll be looking at the trust score for that data set, trying to understand what's good, what's wrong, etc. And in this example, we're just using a sample data set of customer accounts for a fictional telco. we'll be using this data set to basically contains information around names, email addresses, and all that sort of stuff. And then we'll be building a data flow from there. We'll be jumping out of data inventory into Pipeline Designer to build a data flow to take that data, run some data quality checks on it. Any clean data will flow through into Snowflake. We'll be populating a Snowflake data warehouse. Anything that's of poor quality will then go through the data stewardship. We'll show you how you can use that to start to manage those issues, any sorts of data quality issues, and start to cleanse those and fix those before they flow on to our landing stage. So with that, I'm just going to quickly change screens here and load up my screen share. While we're waiting, if there's any questions, do feel free to post them up in the chat. We'll get to you.
Looking good at the moment.
Okay, great. Thanks very much, Marko. Really appreciate your help there as well.
Oh, good. There was one question from that we had around Talend security certs. So I just posted the link from your website around, ISO, SOC 2, etc.
Yes. ISO 27001, SOC 2, all that stuff. Yes. Excellent. All right, I'm going to share my screen now. Hopefully everyone can see my screen. If you can't, please do feel free to yell out in the Q&A box. But, where we are right now is Talend's data inventory. So this is essentially, think of it like a library of all of your data assets. So within here, you can define things like connections to your different data stores. So I've got a few Snowflake ones here, for instance, local connections, different APIs, etc. I also have a library of semantic types, which is used for validating my data. So whenever I connect to a data set in one of these connections, or define a connection that scours through that and does profiling, it will apply semantic types to the data and use that to identify the quality of the underlying data. So for example, if it finds a field is full of email addresses, it'll run an email address check against that field and surface up any email addresses that are poorly formatted or are invalid email addresses. You can apply that to a lot of different data types, and there are custom types you can add in here as well. These are the ones that may ship with it. So you've got different languages as well, but you can obviously add your own, things like credit cards, etc. And custom attributes as well, used for tagging data and adding information around, say, sensitive data, that sort of thing. What you see here is an example of one of the data sets. Now, I've used a filter to filter down on the data set. You can use multiple filters here. You can filter down on different attributes, including things like the trust score to find the best quality data within your data library. But what you see here is my acquired accounts data set. From here, I can do different things like look at a sample of my data, jump from here into Pipeline Designer to build out a pipeline, jump into Data Prep to build out a preparation and cleanse my data there. I can view my trust score here, view user ratings that are being applied to this data, and as well, I can see a bird's eye view of my overall quality of the data in that data set. So you can see here 77% of my values are valid, something like 17% are not, and a little tick here, 6%. 7%, 70% are blank, 6% are invalid values. I can share my data, I can certify it if I'm very happy with it, mark it as a favorite, and view some metadata as well about how it was loaded and by whom. If I click through into this data set, what I'll see is my trust score here in the top left here. So the trust score is a score out of 5 that's built off a few attributes. So things like the validity of the data using that semantic matching and validation that we spoke about earlier. Completeness, of course, how many blanks, etc. there are, what the quality of those are across the entire data set. And there's these different attributes here. So things like popularity, which is based off, say, user score. So if I give it a rating of 2%, that was 21% before, it's dropped to 11%, and my trust score has also dropped. There's other things here as well, like discoverability, so different tags and things that I may apply to the data to make it easier to find and work with, as well as finally usage. So how many data preparations and pipelines that it's used in. So let's, at this point, I could, for example, add a pipeline and jump off from my view over here in inventory to start working with that data set. This might, okay, unfortunately I timed out, so log me out. Let's jump back in. Give me a moment while this jumps back in. And it's generated a pipeline for me here. So this, I've changed applications now. It's changed from data inventory over to Pipeline Designer for me. So it had piped me across, unfortunately logged me out because of the timeout. But you see a similar sort of interface here, the data sets and connections. The same sort of things that define an inventory are available across the rest of the Talend Cloud applications, hence that centralization within that user interface, allowing you to have access, set something in one place and have access to it everywhere. Within the pipelines itself, this is the pipeline that was generated just now with that acquired accounts data set. So if I click on that, I'm taken through to this interface where I can start to build out my pipeline. So here's my acquired accounts data set, and I can view and preview my data down the bottom before I start working with it. So Pipeline Designer does a thing called schema on, or reads a schema on load. So essentially, it's a live schema preview, which means you can start to work with your data directly, start to see the transformations and the effect that the transformations have on it as you apply them. And talking of those, if I click on this plus icon, here are several of my functions, my what we call processes that I can use. And these are constantly being added to. These are the few that are available right now. We've got quite a few new ones that will be coming out over the course of the next, well, ongoing, basically, as part of our development. So I can do a few things here. For instance, I can do aggregation functions. I can do math functions, string transformation functions, filters, etc. If I wanted to do a simple filter, for instance, I click on that, and this pops up here, and I choose my attributes here to filter my data. And over here down the bottom, I get a live preview of my data as it's being filtered and transformed. Once all of that is done, I can add a destination out of the data sets that I have. I can search for one, for example, and then apply it in here. What I'll do actually is I'll step out of this and load up one that I've previously created here. It's a Snowflake Data Stewardship flow. So what this flow is doing at a high level, just to give you an idea here, is taking that same data set, and then I've got a column here called state. And the state, you can see it's got invalid states, QLD for Australian state codes. It's got things like QDL as well, which are invalid states. So I'm going to do a join here with another table. So I've done a full outer join with a data set called state lookup. And basically my join keys are the state and the abbreviation field in the state lookup table. And this is what it looks like. This is what my output data looks like, essentially. See, it's live preview over here. These are new columns that have been added in. You see, look at the joint data set here as well. If I click through to filter, what I'm doing here is filtering on states that are not null. Anything that's not null flows through the top. Anything that is null goes through the bottom here for a remediation process, for instance. So over here, I might, so that's state names that have been pulled across. So this is effectively ones where the states are erroneous in the input data set. Down here, I'm doing a couple of cool extra steps around security. I'm just demonstrating how you might mask data. So effectively using a hashing algorithm to hash my mobile phone numbers before I pass that through to Talend Data Stewardship. So I'm sending that through, I'm assigning that to a user, giving it a priority. I can give some comments if I wish, etc. Up the top here, I'm doing some other functions like formatting my phone numbers. So just some things to format it to a local Australian region format. And then I'm pushing that data through, finally, into Snowflake, into my Snowflake output. This is a data set that resides within Snowflake, within my Snowflake interface. So if I was to click play right now up the top, what this is going to do is run this pipeline and take all of the data running through that process and then push the data into their respective pathways depending on the quality of the data. I'm just going to pop back to the presentation to see if there's any questions here that have come up. Okay, it looks like nothing so far. And feel free to post any questions as they come. We'll answer those as we go. All right, so this is running now, and that's completed. It's completed running through my data. Once again, when you do click play, what this does in this instance, because I'm running it live, it takes all of this, compiles it into code, and then deploys it to a virtual machine, executes on there. So now that's run. I should have a bunch of rows that have gone through to Snowflake. So if I go in here, this is my query. If I run this, you'll see all that data obviously come through here, flowing through for me. Should be quite a bit of data here because I had some earlier flowing through quite a bit more. Right, but we do know that there are some rows that will have failed a check, will have gone down in here. As you can see, some of the sample that's come through here. So let's, at this point, show you some of the steps around how I'd govern this data, how I'd cleanse this data, how I'd manage the poor data quality here. So while I've got good data that's flowing through over there, poor data's ended up here down in data stewardship. let's now jump into the data stewardship application to start cleansing that data. So I'm going to click on that here. I'm going to exit from Pipeline Designer and go into data stewardship. And again, over here, semantic types, which you saw before, are repeated over here. We've also got the ability to define things like data quality rules within data stewardship. So it's a series of cascading rules on your data, if this, then that, as well as data models, which are effectively schemas and rules around them, around data quality checks for those schemas. All of our artifacts, or campaigns rather, effectively represent what we call the units of work, basically. So what that pipeline does is take the invalid data that we found, and it pushes that into a campaign, into a unit of work called clean states, I should say. So 51 rows of data have flown through here. Those are individual tasks. Each task is a row. So if I click through onto clean states, I'm taken to this view where I can start to remediate that data. And I can see my columns that have come through, as well as some metadata on that data itself. You can see it's just been created here. Got some timestamps, which have been created by priorities that we assigned earlier as well. But what it's also done is it's used semantic matching, semantic analysis to look through these fields and identify that, for example, this column here, it says PIN, but it's an Australian postcode column. It's got 4-digit numerals in here, and these represent or match with the semantic type of Australian postcode. Australian postcode, that's correct. And then over here, it's looked through this column and said, look, these are the values that match an Australian state code. However, unfortunately, these values are all wrong, or they don't stand up correctly to the values that are correctly formatted values. So what I could do here is click on the column. Data stewardship gives me the ability to look at some profiling information, down here, so a bit of a chart of my values or the patterns that apply in here. But I can also do functions. I can apply functions to change the values here. And these functions are contextual based on the types of data. So you have different functions for numericals, you have different functions for text. But I could also, for example, let's say I scroll down to the QDL values. I could double click on a field. I'm given this drop down based off the semantic type, and I could use that to apply transformations individually, or use these to apply them to mass of values here. Once I'm happy with a correction here, I can go over here, click on this lock. And what that does is mark it as validated. You can say, okay, validate those results, and those results will then flow through to a staging area, and I can pick those up again in Pipeline Designer. I can pick up the cleansed values that have now been marked as cleansed, and I've gone through this governed process where my data steward, the owner of the data, has come through and remarked on the data that, okay, these values were incorrect initially, but I've now applied these transformations and corrections, and they can flow through to the end system, flow through into Snowflake as valid data. Again, a governed process is not a governed process if you don't have auditability and traceability. So for every transformation that you do in here, there is this view over here that provides you an audit log of all the changes and transformations that have taken place for that data before it is flown on. Okay, so that's, I'm going to just stop there. That does bring us to the end of that demo. It just shows you that end-to-end flow again of, let's stop my screen share. Yeah, it does give you a view of that end-to-end flow of taking data, connecting to it within data inventory, identifying issues with it using the trust score, and then building out a pipeline to start cleansing that data and fixing that data, or rather doing a data quality check, and then fixing that data within data stewardship. Right, Mark, got a question from you here. So I'm just going to read that out live and just answer it live, I think. So when running cleaning rules, etc., what mechanisms are there to pass the errors back to the source system for resolution? In this instance, what I've done with the error is I've piped the error through to data stewardship. What I could do instead is have thresholds, for instance, that I define. And under a certain threshold, for instance, I consider that to be, I guess, rubbish data. And that I could continue to build out the pipeline to flow that data back to a source system. So essentially in my pipeline itself, I have a step, an additional step, where I have my data output defined as that source system, or someone at someone who manages that source system, or a landing table, or a regex table, or what have you. Hopefully that answers your question there. Okay, leave that for now. Right, so back over here on our slides. So yeah, we've gone through that process there, showing you how you can manage data quality, data governance using Talend Cloud, along with Snowflake, to essentially input data, assess its quality, and then push good quality data through to Snowflake, and take poor quality data, remediate that within stewardship, and then push anything that's remediated over through to Snowflake in a fully audited end-to-end process.
Looks like you got a few more questions just popped up, but you want to leave it to the Q&A at the end?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, let's leave that till the Q&A. We'll come back to that. Seeing we've got about 13 minutes left, we can blast through these next slides and then get to Q&A for now. All right, I want to cover off a couple more topics around the advanced data warehousing capabilities. Snowflake, obviously, as a data warehouse, as a cloud data warehouse, is constantly evolving and providing quite a few really cool new features. Things like managing slowly changing dimensions, the ability to do obviously replication, etc. Let's see how Talend can support that as well, and really support those capabilities. Starting with replication. So let's imagine you've got a scenario where you've got all of your data in an existing data warehouse, whether that's on-premise and cloud already, and you want to migrate that across into Snowflake. You don't want to have to create an individual job for each table and have to manually start moving that data across and manually defining schemas for each table. That's where the dynamic schema features within Talend come in here. And what we're doing here is an example of a job which connects, in this example, to MySQL. It could be Oracle, it could be MS, SQL Server, etc. And what it does is it generates a list of tables automatically in this step, in the second component. And then that list, it iterates over that list and inputs that. Takes that as an input from MySQL, from a MySQL connection, and starts to push that into Snowflake and starts to load that into Snowflake. And what we're doing here is using a dynamic schema. So it's not necessarily having the schema defined at the start. It reads the schema on load and then pushes that into Snowflake and sets up the mappings and tables and all that in Snowflake automatically. And you can see this job really is quite simple. It's only 4 tables or 4 components. That's all it really takes to start migrating your warehouse en masse. I mean, this is a simple example here, obviously. There may be more considerations for different scenarios, but as an example here, it shows you how easy it is really to start lifting and shifting an existing warehouse, our existing tables across into Snowflake.
Yeah, second, and that's awesome as well. Sorry, I just wanted to add, it's awesome that you roll up the DDL and the data transform, so the data, both migrations in the same pipeline. Makes life easy.
Yeah, exactly. Especially for anybody who's done a migration, can imagine taking that process, building out 4 boxes, and then just pressing play on it. It's so much quicker than writing out the code to do the same thing.
Absolutely.
And managing that as well. Yeah. The second thing, so we had 3 things to discuss here. The second of 3 was focusing on ELT. Snowflake provides fairly powerful, scalable compute and out of the box. And why shouldn't you use that really to start driving your data transformations? You may not want to use your existing hardware. You may not have existing hardware to do this. And there's no reason to start spinning up additional VMs and all that when you have the capability natively provided within Snowflake. So with that in mind, using the same GUI, using Studio, using components within Studio, you can start to use components like this one here, the ELT map component. What we're doing here is taking a sample customer and orders table, doing some processing and joining on that in here, and some filtering and ordering all that, and then pushing that out, creating a new orders by customer table. And all of this processing run within Snowflake, rather than having to build out complex join scripts. All those are auto-built using the drag and drop functionality, using the GUI functionality here. And this table itself automatically optimizes functions and queries, as well as the mappings and transformations before that's pushed down onto Snowflake to run this overall process and generate that output table. And all of that, again, like I said, utilizing Snowflake's flexible architecture to scale up and down, to run this processing, rather than having you needing you to go out and source a VM and all that process and run it manually. Saving time and effort there. Sound good, Marko?
Yeah, it's awesome. Like I said, that sort of links back to the data engineering workload in Snowflake, right? If you've got people who know SQL, they know SQL, but when you start to get thousands of lines of SQL, that can get quite uncomfortable to manage.
Yeah, absolutely. I have had to deal with it in the past, and it's not a fun exercise.
I think we can all, a few of us can resonate with that on the call.
Yeah, absolutely. And the third thing I want to show you, the third of three, is focusing on slowly changing dimensions. So I'm sure many of you are aware of these, but slowly changing dimensions, effectively the field of looking at data that is slowly transforming over time, whether that's updating people's addresses or names, or whether that's someone's done a refund for your retail transaction log. You might need to come in and update that. You might need to put in something to update your inventory, update your income, your revenue for the day, all that sort of stuff. These sorts of things may represent different aspects or different attributes and dimensions of slowly changing dimensions. And to manage that out of the box is one of the key features that Talend also provides on Snowflake itself, running on Snowflake using the aforementioned ELT processing. So there are different types of slowly changing dimensions that are available. Talend provides out of the box components for you to be able to leverage all of these along with the individual configuration components. So for example, if you're doing a type 2, to be able to define the start and end timestamps or indexing fields, specifically to leverage the full capabilities of those SCD formats. And again, as mentioned before, leveraging staging table and then ELT processing across this entire job to leverage Snowflake's compute power and scalability for, again, easier deployment of this. You can imagine having to code or hand code an SCD pipeline would take days, if not months. But in this process here, you're essentially doing this in minutes, and you're pulling all that together in a fairly easy to understand and well-documented form. Again, something that should allow you to have quicker deployment and quicker time to realization of value as well.
Yeah, exactly. Just the visual documentation portion, right? You could end up with hundreds of SCD pipelines, right? Essentially, so just having a consistent method for doing everything, then everyone's sort of on the same page, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And as anybody who's worked with Talend will know, modularity is king. You're able to take these sorts of pipelines and create modular versions of those. And, obviously you may create multiple copies for different dimensions or different scenarios and different data sets. And being able to do that for all the different types of SCD you need or different scenarios that you need is crucial here. And being able to do that quickly and standing that up quickly in a traceable, auditable way is key to any sort of governance as well. Okay. So quick thing on takeaways before we wrap up and head to questions and answers. As you can see here, Talend supports a lot of the key features within Snowflake natively. And will continue to do so. As Snowflake evolves and develops more cool features, we will work closely with them and continue adding in these cool features so you can leverage them quickly and easily. Obviously, things like ELT we've supported extensively, moving away from things like hand coding to be able to do processing using the GUI, using the unified GUI is a key feature here. And as I did mention earlier, we work quite closely with Snowflake as one of our key partners to start enabling new features, but also new data assets and loading them into Snowflake really quickly and early. And as mentioned earlier, Talend has quite a strong focus on data quality and data governance, end-to-end across all of our platform solutions. And all of these are quite strongly used within Snowflake, again, to deliver governed high-quality data using Snowflake's strong data architecture.